When that first came out, I was like, this is the best thing of all time. And this is what we call the universal design. That is to ensure access, right, for individuals who have disabilities. But the way it's designed, it benefits all of us. I'm Tiffany Hunt, and I am a faculty member in the special education program, both for the undergrad and graduate degrees. And I'm the program coordinator for both of those programs as well. Before I came to the university, I was actually at the State Department of Education as the special ed director there. I had taught special education, and I also worked at another university. But when I went to the Department of Ed, that's an administration lens, so no longer thinking of special ed from a teaching aspect, but thinking of it from that. How do you administer funds and the legalities, compliance, and districts actually doing things appropriately according to the law. So of course that then piqued my interest in the law because I had to know it from a much different perspective. At the State Department, they go in and monitor districts and they look for complaints, but they also do complaint investigations. And so I really developed a love for law at that point. The special education law class that I teach is at the master's level, so graduate students. It's an exciting course to me because for special education teachers, we are the only educational professionals where our job description is written in law, like the exact thing that we are supposed to be doing. So it's critical that they understand it. And then I think it's really important for administrators to understand as well because they're running a school and there's a lot of times where you can make some mistakes that you don't realize are actually illegal based on special education law. So what I really want my students to walk away with, what I always tell them is I don't expect that they're memorizing all pieces of the law and all the rules and regulations and the court cases or anything like that, but that they have a broad understanding of what's required and that they know enough to know when they don't know, and they'll know where to go and who to talk to. It's kind of like solving puzzles of like, here's a scenario and what would you do based on rules, regulations, past case studies, what courts have said. And so I love it. Most people think like, well, the law is the law. It's been like that forever. Don't you know it by now? But laws are written in very broad ways. And so when you actually implement laws, then that's where you kind of start to learn, okay, well, what does this actually mean? And that's where courts really help us because people will take things to due process, like the Supreme Court even, right, will make decisions that then we look at to say, okay, so this is what they mean by this particular law. And now this is how we have to change. And that's happening all the time. We talk about 3 laws in particular, but we focus the most on special education because that's what impacts schools the most. But in 1975, we had our first law specific to special education, and that's why we have special ed services today. That law has had quite a few iterations, but the 2004 reauthorization is the most recent one. Additionally, with this law does come some funding as well. So one reason for schools turning down students with disabilities was because some students, it's really expensive. It's really, really expensive to provide them the services they need. And so schools, we're really struggling, and that's a absolute real challenge and struggle for them. And it continues today to be a struggle. The law is not funded even close to what it was intended to be funded at, but schools do receive federal funds. They also receive state funds. There's a law called Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, and it is really a civil rights law that protects students with disabilities from discrimination, and it also requires that schools provide supplementary aids and services to ensure that the student can participate in their class. So it sounds very similar to special education, and this is where I think there's this it's fascinating because that law overlaps a lot. And a student who is qualified in special education, they also are protected under Section 504. But not all students protected under Section 504 actually qualify for special education. So that kind of connection and overlap is really fascinating to me and is really tricky for districts to determine, is this a student that we should serve under Section 504, or is this a student that really needs specialized instruction under special education? We talk a lot about eligibility and how you determine a student's eligibility in both of those laws and how you might make the decision between both of them, but it's ultimately a team decision when they kind of put kiddos in either of those areas. So there's another law called the Americans with Disabilities Act. It is another disability law that is the same thing as Section 504, that it protects against discrimination and affords people access. So if you see like curb cuts in the sidewalk, right? Those didn't always used to be there. When I was young and I had my bike and I'd ride on the sidewalk, it would just like hit the ground. And then I'd ride across the street and I have to pick it back up, right? Now we have curb cuts. Those are really wonderful, right? That's because of ADA, because we needed to make our streets accessible to individuals who might not be walking in the same way that is typical of most people. Yeah, like you just take it for granted, like of course. When that first came out, I was like, this is the best thing of all time. And this is what we call the universal design. So essentially, that curb cut is not for me on my bike. That is to ensure access, right, for individuals who have disabilities. But the way it's designed, it benefits all of us. So when I have the kids and I'm older and I have a stroller, I can also use that. So it's universally designed for anybody. That's where that all comes from. That push button a lot of us use is not necessarily because I can't open the door, but it does help me when I'm carrying a whole bunch of stuff, right? So again, it's universally designed for everybody. And that's what that ADA. The difference, Section 504 is similar, it's just that Section 504 only applied to federally funded organizations, and then ADA expanded it. So now any organization, no matter who you are, has to abide by that law. I think these laws are critically important because students with disabilities are, it's a minority group. It's a group that historically has been overlooked, has been treated poorly, has been not believed in, that they offer anything to society, or, there's a lot of misconceptions and they're absolutely wrong. So it's sad that we have to have these laws in order for students to get their needs met, but we have to have these laws to ensure that students can get their needs met.